Today is Thursday, September 24th, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, the family of Dijon Kizzee is calling for murder charges. He was a black man shot 15 times by LA sheriff deputies. We'll talk with family attorney. Trust me, you don't want to miss this conversation, folks. Protests continue in Louisville over the grand jury's decision. The police officers are responsible for the death of Breonna Taylor. We'll talk with a member of Black Lives Matter there in Louisville. Also, folks, police in Louisville are recorded giving direction to armed MAGA militia members. Wait till you see this video. Also, a new report shows that Joe Biden's economic plan will create more jobs in Biden's first year than President Donald Trump. And in Ohio, black union workers are petitioning for more secure ballot drop boxes. We'll break that down for you. FBI Director Christopher Wray has seen no evidence of national voter fraud in vote by mail. Oh, that should hurt the feelings of Donald Trump. And in Louisiana, the voter registration portal mysteriously shuts down on National Voter Registration Day. Yes, the Secretary of State there is a Republican. And we'll talk with Philando Castile's mother and the head of the Alliance for Safe Traffic Stops about how to be safe if you're pulled over by the police. And the New York woman who attacked a black runner has been charged with a hate crime. We'll give you those details. Plus, we remember former Chicago Bears star Gale Sayers. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin!
Folks, the family of Dijon Kizzee is calling for murder charges in the shooting death of him. He was shot at least 15 times while writhing on the ground in pain, according to an independent autopsy. Joining me now with details is a family attorney, civil rights attorney, Carl Douglas. Carl, glad to have you in Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, Roland, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
So you have worked on a number of cases like this in the past. Your history, you of course worked alongside Johnny Cochran for a number of years as well. Y'all have been fighting these cases not only for the LAPD but also with the county sheriffs. And so take us through exactly what happened. What was the reasoning behind this stop? What did cops say, and why is Kizzee dead?
On August 31st, Roland, Monday, 2020, 29-year-old Dijon Kizzee was riding a bicycle in the hood. Two sheriff deputies saw him riding probably against traffic. Your listeners will understand that when you ride a bicycle in the hood, you often want to ride against traffic so that you can see what's coming in front of you. Sheriff deputies tried to stop him, and it's important to note, Roland, the sheriff deputies in Los Angeles were not even supposed to be handling traffic matters in that area. That's assigned to the California Highway Patrol. Dijon got off of his bike, probably because he was carrying a gun, and he started running with clothing in his hands away from the cops. He ran to 109th, and there was someone in a car, and he said, "Please help me, they're trying to get me." He wanted to pay this woman money to drive away. She didn't know him, so she didn't do that. Shortly thereafter, a patrol car comes up the street, and two cops are inside. On the passenger side is a trainee, a young cop, and the driver is a training officer. As the trainee gets out of the car, he and Dijon struggle. And the witnesses say Dijon tries to get away from him, and he's holding these clothes in his hands. Dijon's a big guy, 5'9", 260. He's buff. and he's able to push away from the cop. And as he pushes away, the clothing in his hands drop, and a gun drops to the ground. Regrettably, in many parts of America, Roland Martin, if you are holding a gun that drops to the ground in many parts of Los Angeles, and if you so much as bend over 1 inch, either to pick up the clothing or toward that gun, cops are going to light you up. And on August 31st, the first cop, the trainee, fired 3 or 4 shots, and Mr. Kizzee falls to the ground. The second cop comes around the car, and after he's already down, both cops open up, and they both fire 15 additional shots to that man while he's laying on the ground. Clearly, he was mortally wounded. Clearly, he was not a threat, and there was nothing in his hand. One of the shots struck him in the center of his back. 7 were on the back side of his body. One of the shots was a graze wound off the center of his head because he was laying down and the bullet went over his head. There was another wound that shot him in his buttocks because he was laying down on the ground. I say, Roland Martin, that the cops fired a total of 19 shots. Bruh, that says reckless training. 19 shots. That says contagious fire. If the trainee is gonna fire, then the training officer is gonna fire too to try to justify the shooting. And 19 shots says there's a lack of humanity that these officers had for this black man. Folks, cops are afraid of black men. Some black men are dangerous, but all black men are not, and they're not ever given the benefit of the doubt. And that's the problem.
Again, we've seen so many of these cases before, and what I'm trying to understand is, so if the gun falls, then what's the threat?
There is no threat. In California, you can only use deadly force if there is an imminent threat of immediate death or serious bodily injury. In California, we've gotten an added rule. You have to have tried to utilize all alternative means to deadly force. You have to try to de-escalate. In this case, Roland, there was never a warning or a statement. There was never anything about de-escalation, but it's the reality of the streets, brother. If you are a black man running from a police officer and you turn your hand and point anything with an extended arm toward that police officer, you're gonna get shot, just like what happened in Atlanta. And if you have anywhere on your possession a gun, and that gun happens to fall to the ground, if you move 1 inch from your waist, the cops are gonna light you up. That's regrettable. We're gonna talk about Breonna Taylor in your next segment. If you shoot a gun and you shoot it in direction of a cop, the cop is gonna light you up. It's regrettable. And even though you have a right to defend yourself, and even though you didn't hear or you didn't know who it was who was banging on your door in America, if you fire a gun at a cop, the cops are gonna light you up. And there's not a prosecutor in America that would charge that police officer even if there was consequential collateral damage. In our country, we say we're sorry by paying money. And the city of Louisville told the family of Breonna Taylor how sorry they are by paying $12 million in 6 months and by agreeing to reforms. It's not gonna bring Breonna Taylor back. No amount of money ever will. But in our system of laws, we use money to compensate and to say we're sorry. And for a black woman in America, 2020, to be receiving a $12 million verdict is small measure of justice, my brother, but it is justice as well.
This is a video that came from, I'm assuming, a camera in one of the homes. And in this video here, so the cops initially said that they fired on him because he tried to pick the gun up. But this
They changed their story, Roland, and that's
now that was the initial story, right? So I'm gonna play this video here because this video actually shows him dropping the gun. This was captured, I guess, one of the cameras at a nearby home. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this here, folks. You'll see it right here.
Reaches back. We've frozen it there as he begins to bend over. He bends over, picks it up, and that's when the shooting occurs.
And
So,
watch
Carl,
the dirt coming up. He's on the ground, and they're shooting into the ground, and that's why the dirt is flying up. He's not having anything in his hands. If there's another video as well on the internet that has the audio of the shooting, and it sounds like a war zone, Roland. And what you hear is an initial burst of 3, maybe 4 shots. There's a pause. And then there's a volley of shots. Boom, 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 boom. That's contagious fire, I suggest. That reflects the poor training, I suggest. Was he bending over to pick up a gun? Or was he bending over to pick up his jacket? The woman in the picture is running away because she's running and she's terrified by what she's seeing. That woman said before, you better not shoot him. You better not shoot him. Because she knew something untoward was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
She's a critical witness to what happened, standing but a few feet away, and she was terrified, saying, you better not shoot him. You better not shoot him. There's a 6-year-old girl who also witnessed what's happened, who needs psychological treatment because of the horror of that scene. The critical information was that when he was shot in his lungs, he didn't die immediately, Roland. But the upper chamber of his lungs began filling with blood from one of the shots. Another shot, the lower chamber of his left lung began filling with blood, and he began writhing in pain because the blood was filling up in his lungs. And that's when the cops kept shooting at him. And they spent 8, 9, or maybe 10 minutes before they came to him. They waited for backup. They got some kind of a shield, and they got together as a formation after unloading 19 shots in his direction, and then waiting extra minutes for him to bleed out to death. He died from bleeding out because there was no medical attention. There was no warning. There was nothing that was ever said before they opened and fired 19 times.
is the district attorney, are they actually reviewing the case? What's the status? What's the status of that? Is there an investigation?
As happened in Kentucky, there's a similar problem nationwide. Los Angeles County has had an African-American woman, Jackie Lacey, as the district attorney here. She's been there for 8 years. I supported her each of her prior 2 elections. She's an alumni of Dorsey High School, my high school in LA. But there have been, Roland Martin, 622 deaths from police officers in the past 8 years. And Jackie Lacey, a black woman, a proud black woman, has only served to indict one of those 622 deaths.
Wow.
Do I have any expectation that she's gonna do it this time? She's facing a battled re-election on November 3rd, so maybe that might inspire her to do the right thing. And we urge her to bring charges against these shooters, identify them, and bring them to justice. The family of Dijon Kizzee demands nothing less.
Wow. Well, we certainly will be following this story. As you did mention, Breonna Taylor, folks, protesting has been taking place since yesterday. Around 1:15, when the decision was announced that only one of the officers will face charges, and of course, people are not happy at all. The outrage comes after the news that, again, that officer, first of all, none of the three officers involved will be charged with murder. That's first. The wanton endangerment, I mean, we've seen that charge take place as well. Last night, the protesting took place all across the city, but not just in Louisville. There were protests in Portland. There were protests in cities all across this country. This story this case has been embraced by a significant number of people, celebrities, and others. It has been quite the busy story. Yesterday, also, what took place on yesterday. You had what took place yesterday. Three officers were shot as well. I want to bring in our panel. We're going to keep Carl as well. I want to bring in our panel right now. Eric Savage Wilson, first of all, host Savage Politics Podcast. She'll join us in a second. Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. Reese Colbert, Black Women's Views. I was looking at the Twitter feed of Sherilyn Ifill, Carl, and I thought it was interesting because one of the things that she said was that she wanted to actually see the evidence that was presented. She wanted to see the grand jury what they were given because she wanted to know what did the Attorney General actually present to the grand jury for them to consider, because they did not come back with a no bill for the other two officers, which legal analysts say that means that they never even presented evidence that could involve them. Your thoughts?
One, prosecutors are politicians. Daniel Cameron is a Black Republican in a red state. He's an oxymoron every day he walks into his office. He spoke at the Republican convention. I watched because I could not believe this articulate brother was up here spewing his nonsense. But it is a political position. And there was no way in America that he was going to, in Kentucky, a deep red state, indict a police officer who responded to bullets that were fired in his direction first. When you consider that Mr. Walker, the boyfriend, admitted to firing first, a law and order prosecutor is never going to indict that officer, and a law and order jury in Louisville, Kentucky would never convict that officer. They knew what was going on because they boarded up the buildings in downtown Louisville because they knew there was going to be a no bill. And you can always cherry pick as the prosecutor of a confidential grand jury. The interesting part was, Roland, the first shot was fired by Mr. Walker, and then three officers fired 32 shots in response, man. That per se was wanton endangerment. If Mr. Helsinki was accused of endangering a neighbor, certainly his conduct of shooting into Breonna Taylor's house endangered her as well. But there was a political decision made based on the blind belief that if Mr. Walker fired first, whatever happened was collateral damage, even though in Kentucky, if you are trying to defend yourself, but you are reckless and someone dies, that's called reckless manslaughter. But it apparently is so that was never even presented to the grand jury by Mr. Cameron and his staff.
Here's what's interesting, Reese. This is, again, the DA says that the police announced themselves, yet there were 11 witnesses who said they did not hear the police announce themselves. only one witness said they heard the cops. So Cameron arrived at the decision that the cops did indeed announce themselves. You've got 11 who said no, one who says yes. He goes with the one over the 11.
Well, that's where I think the transparency in terms of the grand jury, what was presented to the grand jury, would shed a lot of light in how it was manipulated. Because obviously, presenting 11 witnesses that say this announcement wasn't made tells a completely different story. Even if, typically in these cases, there wouldn't be charges brought just because of the culture and the law and order culture that was described earlier. But I think that, I'm really interested in seeing how one-sided the case was that was presented by Daniel Cameron, or to see if he presented the full picture of what happened. I know there's a lot of misinformation or misunderstanding about what happened that evening. I mean, if you haven't read the New York Times report that was pretty extensive on it, you might have an unclear view. But even if you read that accounting of it, it's clear that the officers acted in a completely reckless manner, and the fact that they would determine that it was wanton endangerment to fire into the white neighbor's apartment but not the black neighbor's apartments, it's things like that that show the complete breakdown in how this case was evaluated.
Erica, what's also interesting here is when you begin to again ask the questions, the AG would not even say if he recommended charges.
Right. Yeah. And, to be very honest with you, I don't think that people really expected much. I think that the lying that he did was very unfortunate, considering Miss Tamika Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mother, had no idea that some of the outcomes were what they were. But again, I think that this goes back to what the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, made the call for, which is to allow the public to see the documentation from the grand jury proceedings. This way, each and every person that is able to pull those documents from offline will be able to go through the same way we did with Brother George Floyd, looking at those transcripts and seeing a lot of the gaps that were not described in the police accounting of how he was publicly lynched. So I think that the release of those documents is definitely going to fill a lot of holes and definitely let folks know kind of what in fact did happen on that day, unfortunately.
So, Greg, this is the system that plays, and that is officer involved in the shooting. What DAs do across the country, they don't want to actually make the decision themselves. So what they do is they say, "Oh, we'll take it to a grand jury." And then the grand jury, we took it to a grand jury, and the grand jury chose not to indict. So you know what? There it is. What people don't realize, all cases don't have to go to grand juries.
No, that's right, Roland. It's prosecutor's discretion. The United States and Liberia, which was the United States colony in Africa, are the only two countries in the world that employ the grand jury as a prosecutorial option. Young Mr. Cameron, a wonderful young brother, if you're using as your standard by judgment being a young toady in apprenticeship, is auditioning. If and when the White Nationalist Party steals the election of 2020, I have no doubt in my mind, and let's see what happens, Clarence Thomas will be approached at some point and asked to retire. Now, unlike the Democrats, the White Nationalist Party appointed judges over the years have retired from time to time. William Rehnquist is an outlier, but you saw that with Souter. You saw it with others. But Daniel Cameron is auditioning for a spot. He's looking to move on up in the Jefferson's parlance. And 65 years to the day that an all-white jury let the killers of Emmett Till go, Daniel Cameron did his job. Brother Douglas is absolutely right. This is about power. The only true bill that was read out was, of course, for the only crime that was committed that day, which is the endangering of white life while you're taking black ones. Breonna Taylor is not a human being. Her boyfriend Walker is not a human being. Daniel Cameron has made his choice. And what we saw yesterday was an exercise in raw, naked power. Now, as Brother Douglas said, and I too am a true fan of that brother. I was right in law school when he was out there with Johnny Cochran fighting those fights. Jackie Lacey is a Democrat, no question, and a black woman, but she's also had the majority of her contributions over the years come from law enforcement. And what we have to understand in this country is that the unregulated thugs that are part of law, quote unquote, law enforcement, these killers on the streets, have been given a license to kill over the years by the steady erosion of laws that allow Cameron to do what he did, which is make a choice into how and what to charge. He could have easily charged those other officers with the same statute or even more when you read that section of the Kentucky State Code. But his choice not to do that, as Brother Douglas said, finally was a political choice. And I want to congratulate Daniel Cameron, because whatever he does with the rest of his very nearly now worthless life, he will go down in the history books as one of the great traitors to the race.
Carl, you've talked about Jackie Lacey in L.A. She faces a very tough re-election. I have talked to numerous folks there. They've been greatly disappointed in her because of her refusal to prosecute police for wrongdoing in Los Angeles. I've talked to other black district attorneys across the country, and they told me point blank that when they are in these various meetings at district attorneys' conferences, that she is not a progressive, that she is all about law and order. She's not actually in the same vein as other DAs. And I had one black DA tell me, we welcome her losing. That spoke volumes that another black district attorney would say she is not one of us in terms of trying to change this system.
Brother, to be clear, I know Jackie Lacey. We went to the same high school. I supported her twice, but regrettably, she will put her finger to the winds of political goings on and act that way. She does not provide bold leadership. Now, to be clear, I'm biased. I represent Dr. Melina Abdullah, who is suing Jackie Lacey and her husband for pulling a gun on them when they went to her door for a meeting. So there's no love lost between me and Jackie Lacey.
Well, hold on. You're representing her, but you also supported Jackie Lacey twice. So it's not that you're biased. You bottom line. So now people can't say you're a Jackie Lacey hater because you supported her twice.
Absolutely right. We're alums, man. Okay, but if there's somebody on my neck, good brother, I don't care what color the knee is. Whether it's a black knee like Daniel Cameron or Jackie Lacey, when there's change that is necessary, I'm one for change.
Well, and I think this is also important that when we talk about who we support, and to your point, Greg, look, that was a black district attorney. I need people to understand this. There was a black DA in Philadelphia who was corrupt and who got busted and went to prison. He was replaced by a white DA, Larry Krasner, who is very progressive. I just want people to understand, this is not, look, y'all need to understand, just because somebody black running, don't mean they with us. So I just want us to be clear that when we're making choices for folk, you look at what they do, you look at their record, you look at their policies, and how they're going to lead. Carl Douglas, we appreciate you joining us, man, on the show. Thank you so very much. I look forward to having you back.
Please do, man. Next time, please.
Yes, sir. We'll do it again. All right, folks. Let's now talk about, again, we're less than 40 days from the election, and so many different things have been going on in this election. Republicans are trying their best to steal this election. Yes, I'm using steal for a reason. 39 days until the election, but voting has already started in locales all across the country, which is why we do this every day for a reason. We want you folks to double check to ensure that you have not been purged. Please go to vote.org to simply check your registration. You can also go to iwillvote.com to also check your registration. One of the issues that Donald Trump thinks that he can win on is the economy. He's proclaimed he's the great job creator, how he built this economy, which is a lie. which is a huge lie. It was, again, a thriving economy when President Barack Obama left office. But Moody Analytics Analysis, they've released a report that says Joe Biden's economic plan will create 18.6 million jobs in his first term. That's 7.4 million jobs more than Donald Trump. Biden's plan is estimated to create 66% more jobs than Trump in the next 4 years. Joining us to break this thing down is Dr. William Spriggs. He's an economist for Howard University. Dr. Spriggs, the issue of the economy is one that is paramount. You've got these white conservatives, these white men who are supporting Donald Trump. You've got Joe Biden trying to appeal to these white women who backed Trump. 53% of the vote and 53% of white women who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. This Moody's analysis, how did they reach this conclusion?
Well, it's based on sort of common sense economics. It's the things that we know generate jobs. And what we got from Trump was, if we give massive tax cuts to corporations and to the richest people on the planet, they're going to make investments. Well, we gave them the tax cuts. They didn't make the investments. And then we hit COVID, and we've lost more jobs than when he took office. And because the corporations squandered the tax cuts on stock buybacks, we didn't have a better financial position for our corporations going into the downturn. What you see in the Biden plan is what we know makes jobs. You invest in infrastructure and job creation. You actually talk about real job creation. So that is what's going to make things different. The effect of increasing investment in higher education, getting a better qualified workforce, that's what makes jobs grow.
This, of course, is a big deal because, again, Trump swears that because he's this great businessman and he's out there talking about how he's done so much for black people and things are just going so well. Well, if you look at these numbers here, first of all, the unemployment rate for African Americans was 7.2, 7.7 when he was inaugurated. Now it's around 14%. It's doubled. Now he loves to ignore COVID. Just like Larry Kudlow yesterday was talking to the folks, and he was getting pressed by a Fox News radio reporter who kept talking about, no, what are the poverty numbers now? What are they now? And Kudlow, well, why are you nitpicking? He's like, that's not nitpicking. But if the Biden plan is going to create 18.6 million jobs, that has to benefit black people.
It's designed to benefit black people because a large part of the investment are in the types of jobs that we hold. So the infrastructure includes the care economy, and we need an expansion of that right now. Everybody understands that with kids being stuck home, that you can't get labor force participation back up for women. So you have to have a strategy that's aimed at helping women get a path to the job market. That is essential for creating more jobs. The difference between what Trump did, trickle-down economics, does not generate net new jobs because it doesn't expand opportunity. It just lets fat companies feed off of skinny companies. When you expand opportunity, you're making the pie bigger. That's how you really create net new jobs. And that means you have to give opportunities to people who don't have them. That's how you create more jobs.
And so this analysis, hopefully folks will actually see that. I want to bring my panel right here as well. Reese, when we talk about the economy, again, Trump has tried to convince people. He's tried to convince, and a lot of people, black folks and others who buy into this notion that, oh, he's this great businessman. The debt has exploded in America. That's first. They don't want to deal with that. And the reality is we're not seeing the incomes rise, and we're seeing companies pocketing significant amounts of money. They took the money from the tax cut, reinvested in the stocks, which only helped the shareholders, not the workers.
Right, but unfortunately, he is winning on the economy based on polls. People believe that Donald Trump is stronger on the economy than Joe Biden, even though the entire strength of Trump's economy is what he inherited from the Obama Biden administration and ran into the ground with his abdication of authority and responsibility to adequately address COVID-19. So, this is a messaging issue that the Biden campaign has. Indisputably and quantitatively, their policies are better. The problem is, number one, you have a media that's a mainstream media, let me be clear about that, that's interested in perpetuating the Trump Republican Mitch McConnell narratives rather than doing reporting like what you're doing right now and showing the different analysis that shows that the Biden-Harris plan creates 10 million more jobs than the Trump plan. And these are jobs that are needed because we've lost millions of jobs throughout this COVID crisis. And as you pointed out, even as jobs have returned, not a net gain, but just a return, Black people have been left behind in the return of these jobs. And so this is a message that could be a winning message if the Biden campaign, I'm not criticizing them, but what I'll say is that the Biden campaign should spend the next 39 days talking the economy, healthcare, and Supreme Court. Those are the issues that they need to hammer home more than anything else. And I had mentioned a couple weeks ago that this issue in particular resonates with Black men voters as well as Black women voters. And so I think that people have to understand that economic issues are issues that all demographics are interested about. And it's a top issue for many people, COVID being second, depending on whether you're talking to Republicans or Democrats, they switch. But the economic plan is a winning plan if they talk about it and continue to talk about it and really, really push this narrative.
This was a particular chart, Erica, that was put together on social media, and they show that it's a real GDP under different election scenarios. If there's a Republican sweep, current policy, Democratic sweep, and what the baseline is. And they show that real GDP and jobs if it took place under Democrats. In fact, one of the groups, I'm going to try to find that ad. One of the groups against Trump dropped an ad that even showed Trump stating in his own words how the economy improved under Democrats.
Of course. And I agree with Reese. I think that particularly with this last stretch that we're moving into as it relates to the election, that those three things are real touchstones that should be hammered because the stock market is not the economy. When you're talking about the jobs and job loss, people want to work because they want to be able to pay their rent, they want to be able to pay for their utilities, and they want to be able to provide for those people that are dependent on them in their households. When you're talking about healthcare, for them to also talk about how this very same regime is in court fighting to take away tens of millions people, Americans, health care in a global pandemic where we still don't have a national testing strategy and where Donald Trump believes that his response will be to lie about having a vaccine ready and then also talk about these 33 million people who are on Medicare will be receiving some type of card with a $200 prescription benefit on it. And that's supposed to happen before the election. And then Supreme Court justices for people to see, and I think they've come to realize, but for people to really, really see the impact of the courts and on everyone's daily lives, what these appointments to not only the Supreme Court, but the federal judgeships, what that actually means for Americans, breaking that out so people can understand that we literally are at war and making life and death choices, particularly when you look at that chart and the delineation between what are non-farm jobs and then what are those jobs, the essential jobs that people are working day in and day out. So I think that that is something that could help those people who perhaps were not voting because it's not a persuasion election, but perhaps for those people who weren't voting just because they didn't even know that perhaps they were eligible to vote because maybe they've not had someone really show interest in them around talking about specific issues, that this is a message that needs to go from home to home, from wherever people are, and meet them to let them know you have to participate in this general election.
This is the ad from the folks at Midas Touch. I want to play this before I go to Greg Carr and then back to Dr. Spriggs. So watch this, folks.
Just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. Just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. Just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans. Just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
That thing right there, Greg, again, this is where messaging matters. What has happened in this country is that Republicans have successfully attacked unions. They have successfully created in the minds of people that if you listen to us, you can be enormously rich one day, but they're going to take your money. Numbers don't lie. If you look at the economy under Bill Clinton, what he inherited from George H.W. Bush, then you look at the economy that took place under George W. Bush, and then what President Barack Obama inherited, and then what he left with, then what now Trump has done, the numbers don't lie. But there's this mindset because the National Chamber of Commerce supports Republican candidates, and what that is, they are representing big business. They're representing CEOs. I don't even understand why the media. I don't do it on here. I don't understand why the media has made it a daily thing. Stock market going up, going up, going up.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand how has that now become a daily barometer? The stock market is treated like a weather segment in local news. It's on national newscasts every single day, and that's what they've done. They have psychologically created the mindset that, oh, if a Republican comes in, business is going to boom. They're going to get rid of regulation. They're going to slash taxes. But who benefits, Greg?
Well, not Roland. I mean, there's a reason why Bill Spriggs has lent his considerable intellectual gifts to the service of organized labor over the years. Every time my friend and brother opens his mouth, I learn something about the economy. I think, of course, Reese and Erica are right. If this message is drummed enough, it may put this election at least in a position where it'll be a little bit more difficult to steal. But here's really what's at stake. This isn't really about information in a sense. It is indeed about marketing. And the reason why they include the stock market is because they are speaking to their interests. This is commercial news entertainment media. And that's what's important to the owners. You see, I think a lot of this is being driven by a fundamental misunderstanding of the modern world system and the nation state. Corporations are only situationally domestic. You see, they really don't care as long as they're extracting value and extracting profit. That's why the evisceration of organized labor over the last 50 years has been so important, whether it be in the courts, the state legislatures, the federal legislature. Organized labor is the way you fight back. But here's finally the problem we have with organized labor and in this country. You see, George Lipsitz wrote a book a number of years ago called The Positive Investment in Whiteness. It has been white nationalism that has been used as a wedge to keep those stupid white voters away from their class interests. And as a result, from the end of the Civil War to now, at peak moments when corporate profits have been threatened, the move has been to appeal politically to white nationalism. So people will continue to believe that they can become rich in, by the way, a global capitalist system that is on the verge of collapse. And what you're seeing here in the United States in terms of this appeal to white nationalism is being replicated across Europe. It's in Latin America. As these corporations continue to make uber profits, we've seen a multiplication of billionaires during this pandemic. We've seen the rich get so much richer, and they don't really give a damn about the poor, except when finally in a moment you have to have people vote to put the legislators back in that you have bought. And in order for that to happen, you've got to appeal not to their economic logic, which is deeply undeveloped to begin with. Everybody can't be rich in a capitalist society, but you appeal to the illogical thing. And the illogical thing is race. So you can run all those commercials till the wheels fall off. As long as Donald Trump is holding up that Klan sign and pushing for white nationalist terrorism, those fools are going to go out there and vote against their class interests. And these corporations are going to sit back and laugh as they continue to get Mitch McConnell and them to push through tax breaks and continue to eviscerate labor. And that's what Bill Spriggs, part of his work has been. We got to knit to get this labor coalition together. Otherwise, the L that the people in this country is going to take It's certainly going to be racial, but it's going to be a whole lot of white people on the street too.
This is the thing with messaging, Bill. And again, look, this is the world that I live in media. The language often spoken is, if the Democrats come in, we're going to lose jobs. And so here's what happens. Jobs becomes the kryptonite. Every politician, lose jobs, lose jobs, lose jobs. And so then the worker, the consumer, the voter goes, oh my God, that's me. I'm going to lose jobs. So if we vote for this Republican, they're going to save our jobs. They're going to save the jobs. And so it's language. And what has happened is they have successfully created this psychological notion that Republicans are about entrepreneurship, creating business, making an opportunity for you. You can make as much money as possible, but then when you look at income inequality and then you look at how that's expanded under Republican presidents, it's because they cater to those who own the company, not those who work for the company to make those owners bigger and better. That is the formula.
That's the formula, and it's also the ignorance of the American people. The way in which it gets explained to people is the trickle-down story works because if I have regulations, I can't hire workers. If you raise wages, I can't hire workers. You're going to raise my cost. And so people believe that these job creators are actually a thing. And it's that miseducation that convinces them that even though the data clearly show creating more inequality, cutting back on regulations, cutting back on wages makes the economy collapse. Just like you said, what happened? George H.W. Bush can't handle the savings and loan collapse. The economy sags. Bill Clinton comes in, fastest growing economy in U.S. economic history. George W. Bush takes over the fastest growing, most successful economy ever in American economic history and crashes it. It takes him all of 8 years just to get back the jobs that he lost in a little tiny recession in 2001. And then in the Great Recession, he loses all the jobs and leaves to Barack Obama fewer people on the payroll than when George W. Bush took office 8 years ago. 8 years, negative job creation. Then you have Obama having to heal that and then launch the longest consecutive string of job creation in U.S. labor history. The lowest unemployment rate for Black people that any president ever inherited. And this bozo crashes that. So this idea is clear that it's not the way on the record, but in Americans' minds, they don't understand how jobs are created. Jobs are created when you make the pie bigger. They don't get created by you stealing jobs from me. And that's what happens when you cut regulation, cut wages, you cut the purchasing power of workers. You make the pie smaller. You can't create more jobs by making the pie smaller. That's why every time they collapse the economy, because eventually the pie gets too small and there's nothing to eat. And then you got the crows picking. So if you want to change it, we economists have to do a better job of explaining to people how do you really create jobs. And you don't do it by trickle down.
No. You know what? Actually, no. Here's the deal, though. I'm not going to push back on it, but I'm going to explain it better. Here's actually the real deal, Bill. The problem is, and I will say this, the fundamental problem is that in media, they don't have economists on talking about the economy. The reason Donald Trump is in the position that he is in is because networks like CNN and Fox News and other media outlets kept going back to Donald Trump talking about the economy. Look, this actually happened. I was at CNN. I was on the air one day with a Heidi Phillips and somebody else. And I said on the air, the next time Donald Trump is on CNN, we should run a crawl at the bottom that says, this is for entertainment purposes only. I got an email from Ken Jouts, the executive vice president at CNN, who is still there. He is on the management team at CNN. Got an email said, do not criticize Donald Trump when he's coming on our air. And I said, hell no. And that night, Obama it was a speech or something like that. I forgot what it was. Might have been a State of the Union or something like that. And Donald Trump was on Piers Morgan's show. And I got just so sick of the bullshit, I just started tweeting like, why in the hell are we listening to him? There are other real CEOs with real companies we can talk to. But no, what media does is they'll put Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase, to come talk about the economy when Jamie Dimon is not trying to actually speak about the economy from a broader perspective. They'll go to Goldman Sachs. They'll go to these CEOs, but they actually won't talk to folks who don't have to be honest, a vested interest in it shifting one way or the other. That's the problem, Bill. That's the problem.
That's what Greg was pointing out. The point of the media is to underrate the corporations, and it's underwritten by corporations. So yes, this happens all the time. I have so many students who say, I'm really interested in the economy. I watch Suze Orman all the time. And I'm like, so yes, this is the media giving us the entertainment that underwrites their broadcast and underwrites their perspective. But Americans do buy this trickle-down idea, and it is unfortunate because it doesn't work. And as often as we repeated the error, people don't absorb that it doesn't work. They don't hear enough times. They don't have enough economists on enough times. So thank goodness you do have real economists on. I love when you have Julianne on and others. And it's necessary for us to repeat to our own people. It doesn't trickle down. My grandfather was a gardener. And if you water roses from the top, you get leaf rot. You don't get better roses. You get leaf. You water roses from the bottom.
All right.
By watering.
Great words there. Dr. Bill Spears, we certainly appreciate it, man. Thanks so very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, let's continue our conversation. We talked about what's happening in Ohio there. So remember we told you the story of how the judges ruled in Ohio to expand drop boxes? Well, let me tell you how that actually happened. It's because a group of Ohio black workers partnered with the A. Philip Randolph Institute to actually demand this. But here's what's very interesting, okay? It's very interesting. They're also suing them, calling on the Secretary of State to make changes to ensure a safe and healthy election. But here's also what's interesting. ProPublica did a story, all right, that detailed this lawsuit. So here's what they did. The Secretary of State, he then calls Von Spassky. Y'all might say, who's this Von Spassky guy? Well, he's a guy who the Republicans use all across the country, Greg, to allege voter fraud. Von Spassky works for the Heritage Foundation. Von Spassky has been holding off-the-record discussions only with Republican secretaries of state. Now, what the documents realize, so what happened was, so the A. Philip Randolph Institute sends a letter to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State doesn't respond to the A. Philip Randolph. He calls Von Spassky. I blasted the Heritage Foundation for this guy, and I know a sister, she runs it, Kay Cole James. But the reality is this here. They are using, and this guy Von Spassky also happened to be on that commission, that Donald Trump commission, that voter fraud commission. This guy has been, he is not an expert. He's not. But Republicans see him as one of the leading voices because his whole messaging is how do you craft policy to specifically keep folks from voting. And in fact, I believe he was actually caught on record saying he did not believe everybody should even have the right to vote.
Well, of course. I mean, again, a fundamental misunderstanding. We have a fundamental misunderstanding of where we live. This country is not built on something as abstract as truth or morality or human rights. This is a settler state, and power comes. And in fact, it was A. Philip Randolph himself that says, you know, our lives will be determined by what we can take from the table and how long we can hold on to it. He gave a definition of power. So when the white nationalist assistant Secretary of State, Grant Shaffer, called the white nationalist Hans von Spassky, and yeah, with all due respect to the sister that runs the Heritage Foundation, it is a white nationalist think tank. You know, this is where the diversity argument falls apart. Just because you have a few Negroes sprinkled around doesn't mean that you, and if anything, it's like a disguise. But at any rate, he talked to him after the A. Philip Randolph Institute reached out. And then Frank LaRose, who is the white nationalist Secretary of State in Ohio, issued that rule, only one box per district, 88 districts in Ohio, including Cleveland has got 1 million people in it and 1,200 square miles. But that's not even it. The people are saying it doesn't matter who the judge is, well, my vote doesn't count. It was an elected judge at the Franklin County Court of Appeals who graduated from the same law school I did, Ohio State, Judge Richard Pryor, who says, no, you're not, you can't tell these people in the counties how many boxes they can put out. Now, of course, these white nationalists have appealed. It's going to the 10th District Court of Appeals in Franklin County. There's a black woman on that court, right, as well. And those are elected judges, those 7 judges. They're going to hear the appeal. And if the white nationalist party doesn't like that, they're going to appeal to the Ohio Supreme Court. There another round of elected judges, including one black woman on that court who actually has a PhD as well as a JD. The point is elections matter. Remember the election of 2004 that the white nationalist party stole, not 2000, but 2004. Who was the Secretary of State in Ohio? A Negro named Kenneth J. Blackwell, a Negro in support of the white nationalist party. Secretaries of State matter. Van Spassky has known it. He is an absolute expert on election stealing. And that's all the white nationalist party is interested in, whether it be ALEC bringing together the Secretaries of State or the Heritage Foundation bringing together the Secretaries of State. Ladies and gentlemen, this is about power. So everybody can stop talking about, we don't know, we're shocked. The ACLU lawyer, I'm shocked, we're shocked. Stop being shocked and get smart. Grab some power and hold on to it. Listen to A. Philip Randolph.
Yesterday, Reese, we did this story here. The folks at 538 broke down the polling data, and it talked about 18 to 29-year-old black voters and 60 plus. And it said here that trust congressional Republicans to do what is best for black people. Among blacks polled 18 to 29, 29% say they trust Republicans to do what's best for black people. 8% of 60-year-old or older black people, just 8%. Overall, the number was 21%. GOP is welcoming to black Americans. 18 to 29-year-old people, 28%. 60 plus, just 7%. Overall, 22%. Why am I reading that? Because I was just talking about Hans van Spassky. This is a story from The Intercept on February 27th, 2019. Headline: Conservative expert privately warned GOP donors that a voting rights bill would help Democrats. In this, the bill was called the For the People Act. It would revamp lobbyist registration, campaign financing, and voting rights. The Brennan Center says, according to this lead, It will create a more responsive and representative government by making it easier for voters to cast a ballot and harder for lawmakers to gerrymander. Now, Heritage opposes the bill. They call it clearly unconstitutional. He also complained it comes at the expense of federalism. But here's what it says, Reese. Just 2 weeks later, however, as Spakovsky addressed a private gathering of conservatives, he was considering more candid about his reason for opposing the bill. It would be bad for Republicans. Why did he come to that conclusion? Is right here. One measure in the bill that von Spakovsky singled out would guarantee people with felonies voting rights when they leave prison. The result would be an electoral advantage for Democrats, von Spakovsky said, citing a study that found that a number of close congressional elections in recent history would have tipped toward Democrats had the law been in place. Then this is what he said, quote, "The key race that stuck out to me, is that Mitch McConnell would have lost his first race for the U.S. Senate, which was a very close election. He won by 5,000 votes in 1984. So, Reese, when I see these black people say that Republicans will be good for black people in 28, 29%, I don't care if you're a black conservative. I don't care if you're a black Republican. But here's my whole piece. You can be a black conservative or black Republican, but don't use power to deny people the right to vote. And if those who are formerly incarcerated are more likely to want to get the right to vote, if looking at our numbers, they're likely going to be black. So the very black people in the 18 to 29 category who has feelings for the GOP, those same people are trying to screw you, black people. This is one of their experts saying it to GOP donors.
These numbers are just disgusting and disappointing, but I can't even say that I'm all that shocked, to be frank, because of the fact that there is a massive disinformation, misinformation campaign that's aimed towards that particular demographic. And another thing I think that Republicans have been very successful at is they understand this is not a matter of conversion when it comes to black voters, and in particular young black voters. But if they can successfully convince enough people that there is no difference between Republicans and Democrats, then some of the goodwill that comes from the things that the Democrats actually put forth, like for instance, the fact that people are getting got $1,200 in the CARES Act, that was something that the Democrats really pushed for in terms of that amount, or $600 a month unemployment and things of that nature. Then they get some of the goodwill from those things, but they don't take the blame for the white nationalist agenda that they are putting forth, and they're getting even more blatant about it. So it's disappointing, but it's deliberate, and a lot of people are so woke that they're asleep, okay? A lot of people are so woke that they're ingesting all of this propaganda, this anti-democratic propaganda, and they just, it just defies logic, it defies facts, and it defies reality. And so this is why I constantly talk about the disinformation and misinformation campaigns as part of the voter suppression campaign against black voters. It's not just what they're doing at the ballot box. It's not just what they're doing in terms of purging and in terms of the laws. It's what they do in terms of manipulation and convincing black voters that there is no difference between the white nationalist party and the Democratic Party, which does have its issues. I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is perfect, but they are miles apart in terms of what they propose. 400 bills that have passed the House that are collecting dust on Mitch McConnell's desk shows the complete difference between a Democratic brand country and a Republican Trump white nationalists ran country. But people are just not paying attention, and where they're getting their information from, which is all curated by Twitter algorithms and social media algorithms, are telling them a story that's not accurate.
And this is why right here, when I look at these folks here, Erica, and I got to call people out. Like I got some dumbass on my YouTube channel. He goes, well, Joe Biden, 1994 crime bill information is true. Okay, so here's the question. What have Democrats done? So this is just real simple, okay? So for all the people out there who focus on the 94 crime bill, and Joe Biden should be criticized as the author of that crime bill. But here's what I want to know. What the hell has happened since?
Right.
That's what I want to know. I want to know what the hell has happened since. 1994 is 2020. What I want to know, what has Joe Biden and Democrats done between 1994 and 2020? Because the story I just read for you was from 2019. The A. Philip Randolph story I just read for y'all from ProPublica was yesterday. So while a bunch of y'all, and I'm going to say it, want to remain stuck on stupid and talking about, well, Joe Biden, he praised Eastland in 75. Wrong as hell. I'm going to call him out. But y'all do realize that there are Senator Eastlands in 2020.
That part. Hello.
Y'all do realize.
In the White House, Stephen Miller.
Y'all do realize.
Right.
And again, this is for all y'all just stuck on stupid folk who listen to ignorant people who call women bed wenches, who are telling you fools not to vote, and they all hollering tangibles. And what we gonna get, let me remind you, there are Eastlands today. Eastland was a Dixiecrat. The Eastlands today are Republicans.
That's right.
Erica, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, hardcore Republican, made changes to early voting because of COVID. Republicans in Texas are suing him. They ain't just suing Democrats. They are suing a fellow hardcore Republican because they deal is, oh, hell no, we do not want them voting by mail. We don't want them having any extra early voting days because, and I'm going to say it before I go to you, Erica, and then when I go to a break and come back and talk to Philando Castile's mama. For all you simpleton SOBs, for all of you simple Simons, for all of you folk who are stuck on stupid, and I know Cleo Monaga was here, he was rolling, don't call them names, but if your dumb ass is advocating not voting, that's exactly what they want you to do. Because Erica, Donald Trump stood before the microphones and said, thank you, black people, for not voting. Y'all helped me. Go ahead.
With his damn foot on everybody's neck. Listen, in 2020, the son of a Klansman, I've been saying that for over 2 years, not because it's a cool comedic punch, because it's the damn truth. And what the Klan has done and continues to do and have a past of doing is anti-Blackness, hatred, and always marginalizing people of color. When we think about where we are right now, when we think about this Vaughn man who is runs the election law reform initiative over in the Heritage Foundation and keeps up with the database that's supposed to be monitoring supposed voter fraud since 1992. There were less than 1,300 cases. And guess what? Of those 1,300 cases, you have people, particularly back in 2018, Republican operatives that in 2018 in North Carolina are actually in jail now because they actually participated in voter fraud for the 9th Congressional District there in North Carolina. You have a Donald Trump in 2020 that said in North Carolina in September to make sure that you not only vote by mail, but make sure you follow up at that vote and you vote at the poll on election day. This is the person that has their damn foot on your neck. If the vote were not powerful, you would not have Republicans meeting in secret. You would not have the son of a Klansman in the White House telling everybody on national TV at 6 o'clock in the damn evening that he'll think about conceding the election. He's already saying that mail-in ballots, which we know that because we're in a pandemic, and you just mentioned, in Texas, I think there were over 50,000 new cases of COVID in the past 14 days in the state of Texas alone. So you have a governor there, you have a fight that's happening there. You're talking about people being able to vote safely, and here this foolish, evil clown is saying on television that, there's not really anything to be trusted around mail-in ballots. This is the present threat. This is not only a domestic terrorist, but this is a person who has allowed foreign entities into this country and sitting in the White House and to interfere with the disinformation campaign that Reese continues to talk about so that the vote will be suppressed. This is the person that we have to get out, him as his regime in November. There's really nothing to talk about other than that for the next 39 days. And if anybody is sitting out the election, they're actually saying that their life is of no value either.
And I'm real clear. I don't need you to love Democrats. I don't need you to love Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't need you to like them. But I damn sure need you to know who hates you. Let me repeat that for somebody who didn't quite get it. I don't need you to love Democrats. I don't need you to love or like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. But I do need you to know who hates you and who wants to take away health care, who wants to take away the Affordable Care Act, who wants to cut Social Security, who's already done it, done away with police consent decrees. I want you to understand who is actually attacking us, who is actually using opportunity zones to gentrify our neighborhoods and got you thinking they investing in our neighborhoods, but then your mama and your grandmother and your aunt and your cousins can no longer afford to live in the very same neighborhoods. But if some of y'all want to sit here and I ain't voting, I don't care, if they all the same, okay, go right ahead. But you know what? Shut the hell up, because I don't want to hear nothing out of your mouth over the next 4 years. Because if you don't do nothing when it comes to the school board, don't say a damn thing about education. If you don't say nothing about the city council and you don't vote, don't say nothing about city services. If you want to complain about the county government but you don't vote, shut the hell up. If you want to complain about what your state should or should be doing but you didn't vote, shut the hell up. Because you can't complain about something where you had no impact in changing when you had the opportunity to do so. Got to go to a break. We'll be back on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Jeffrey Osborne, you got just one vote. Use it.
As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please, take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.
What's up, y'all? I'm Will Packer.
Hello, I'm Bishop T.D.J.
What up, Lana Well, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
4 years ago, a black man was killed by a police officer in Minnesota during a traffic stop. His name was Philando Castile. In response to that devastating news, a black woman named Jacqueline Carter invented the not reaching pouch. The pouch is a clear identification carrier that is marked with the words "not reaching." Officer, I'm not reaching. It can be attached to the driver's side air vent inside of a vehicle. Carter is the president of the Alliance for Safe Traffic Stops. She joins us now, along with Philando Castile's mother, Valeria Castillo. Folks, how y'all doing?
Thank you for having us. Doing well.
So, so this pouch, where did again? Was it something that hit you in the middle of the night, where you said, "Hey, you know what? This might help"?
Well, it didn't hit me in the middle of the night immediately, but it did on July 6th of 2016 as we're celebrating our son Justin's 30th birthday. He had just come back from Afghanistan. He was a medic. That same night, Valerie was losing her son in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. So at that point, I said, you know what, we have to do something. There has to be some type of temporary solution until we can fix the bigger problem. And a few weeks later, I did. I woke up and said to my husband, I got it. And he was like, you got what? And I started sketching it out. So I started talking to some law enforcement friends of mine, and I asked them all, what is it that makes you nervous during a traffic stop? And they all said, the reaching and the movement. And then a couple years later, I met this wonderful lady, Valerie Castile, and I found out, first of all, I was a grand jury court reporter in D.C. You and I met last year. And so I know that you always go to the transcript. So when I went to the transcript, I read that Philando's last words before he took his last breath were, I wasn't reaching.
Valerie, I mean, this is one of the things that people are afraid of. Parents are afraid of. Again, where you have trigger-happy cops, and when someone is going for their driver's license or for their insurance, why did you decide to join this effort to promote this pouch? Can you hear me, Valerie? Valerie, can you hear me? Valerie, can you hear me? I think you might have. We can hear you, Valerie. Can you hear me? She might have us on, guys. So work that out, please. Get the audio straight, please. I'm gonna go to my panel. I mean, this is. I mean, the thing here, Erica, and this is what's so sad for us as Black people. We have to do extra stuff.
Come on, Roland.
Just to be safe. I mean, we got, and this white people have no understanding of the extra stuff that we gotta go through just to be Black, just to drive, just to shop, just to walk, just to barbecue outside.
Yeah, the Black experience, you know, people like to steal our swag, but never our experience. It's often been said people love taking our rhythm, but never our blues. And so when you think about the position that these mothers and, of course, fathers, people who have lost a loved one to state violence, you think about them not only grieving, but they have to lead as well. And so I think that for this woman to come up with something that actually is supposed to be another rail guard to safety, because as we well know, with the viral video footage that we've seen here, particularly this year, that's no real indicator that a Black life will be saved, even if it is filmed being aggravated by the state. So I think that kind of her coming up with something to help provide another layer of protection for Black and brown drivers, women and men alike, and teenagers who, get really excited when it's time for them to begin to be able to command the wheel. I think that that is something that, that's wonderful. But as you said, being in this Black skin means that there always has to be a strategy with the things that many people, non-Black people, enjoy doing without thought.
Valerie, we should have your audio taken care of. Why was it so important for you to support this idea?
It was important for me to support Jackie's creation because, unfortunately, we live in a time where you have to really become creative in order to stay alive. We have so many incidents where our children are murdered, either fleeing or reaching for cell phones or just various excuses because there's no reason to take a human life. And it's being done by people who are sworn to protect and serve us. There is neighborhood violence. Every neighborhood has their sure amount of violence. And, for whatever reason or excuses they give, where they concentrate solely on black crime. But there is neighborhood violence throughout the country. And we living in a time where you have to do whatever you can do to try to stay alive.
Yep.
I mean, these guys are relentless. There's this murderous trend going out throughout this country. And whatever you can come up, whatever you can do, it's a plus, because you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But I think it's very, very helpful that she created this piece because it prevents you from moving of all things. You understand? Because these guys are afraid of you when you move. So the less movement, the better your odds is surviving the encounter with a peace officer.
Jacqueline, first of all, how many of these have you sold? Where can people actually get them?
I've literally sold probably about 50,000 across the country. For some reason, I have a high concentration in California with my sales, so that must tell something about what's going on in California. And you can find the Not Reaching pouch at notreaching.com.
Well, I hate that we had to go there, but unfortunately, as Black folk, we got to do what we got to do in order to stay alive. And as Valerie said, look, if this is something that we got to get, that's what we have to do, because at the end of the day, it's about our folks coming home safe. Folks, I appreciate it. Jacqueline, Valerie, thank you so very much. Please keep spreading the word, and we'll do so as well.
Thank you.
All right, then. Folks, it is to that point, Greg, that's just, again, when the stuff that we endure just being Black, when you talk to medical professionals and they talk about the health impact of racism, I mean, all of this goes with it because of what we have to contend with.
You're right, Roland. One of the great master teachers, college professors, Jules Harrell at Howard University in psychology department. I remember many years ago sitting and listening with Baba Jules as he explained the impact of stress on a Black life. And the way he described it will never leave me. The idea that every time our vessels constrict when we see a cop in the rearview mirror, every time we encounter one of these race-based moments where our blood quickens, our heart rate quickens, he says, It's the equivalent of taking a few seconds off the end of your life. And I said, man, that because he studies stress and the impact of race. And I just want to say this, Erica framed it beautifully. I mean, they want all the rhythm and none of the blues. And as far as I'm concerned, Valerie Castile, of all the parents, of all the women and men who have had their children taken from them, including a brother like Philando Castile, and let's be very clear, this is to you, little Danny Cameron, you little kiss ass. Breonna Taylor is more powerful as an ancestor than she was as she walked the earth. So is Philando Castile. You gotta understand how Africans view this. We're gonna call on them for help, and you will be dealt with. But Philando Castile, this man who's an ancestor before his time, his mother, Valerie Castile, if y'all haven't seen what she did when she went live on Facebook, the commitment she get, Valerie Castile spoke to my heart. She ain't about no bullshit as it comes to this. Ain't no pouch gonna save you. However, it might be the thing in that encounter that might allow you to get away with it just by keeping your hands on it. Because heard what she said, movement. See, these punk ass police want to act, they need an excuse to shoot you. They're hunting many of them. They're not, they're like that kid on the bike in LA. They're hunting people, you see. But if they got a body camera on, if they don't, if your hands never move, if there's no movement, it may be a chance that might be the thing that doesn't give them excuse. So what Miss Castile is saying, listen to her well, and listen to her in context of what she has always said since her son was killed by them punk police in Minnesota. She's saying it might not save you, but we've got to do whatever we can do, and whatever we can do is a plus. So that little pocket thing, yeah, I'm going to get one and stick it right there. And next time I see one of these hunters in my rearview mirror and they pull me over, I ain't moving. Let's see the body cam on. All my stuff is right there. Officer, overseer, punk.
I got to find the video, Reese, of a brother. He's a police officer, and he was really emotional after getting pulled over. Cop made up all kind of stuff. But what's interesting, and the cop comes up and he goes, he goes, first of all, is your body camera on?
Right.
And it was very interesting. He asked, all right, he says, is your body camera on? He had like 3 or 4 questions he hit him with, and the cop was sort of stunned, and he says, because I'm a cop too. Is your body camera on? He said, so I'm recording you right now. I want to make sure that your body camera is on as well. So it picked up you from the moment you got out of your car. So he went through this whole deal. And that's, I mean, it reminds me when I worked at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and I had an editor who had the audacity to tell me I need to get my production up. And I was like, that was my look. And I stood up, and I walked in this circle. It was Kay Northcott, and she goes, a little short little white woman, real petite, frail. And she goes, let's step into the office. I says, yeah, you want to step into the office for this conversation. I said, but but I'll meet you there. So I go to my computer and I print some stuff out. And this is exactly how I did it when I walked into the conference room. I walked in and sat down and went, you might want to read that first. And so I had this sheet, and it had how many days I worked per month, how many stories I wrote per month, how many stories I wrote per week, how many stories I contributed to per week, and then it had my totals. Then she said, well, we don't measure, you're going to love this, we don't measure production by how many stories you do. Isn't that production? I said, oh, so you mean quality. Why don't you turn to page 2? And page 2, I had my stories broken down by how many ran on the front page, how many ran on the Metro cover, and how many ran inside. And I said, now, Kay, you might want to be real careful. Because, see, now if you question the quality of my stories, that's going to come back on you since you one of my 2 editors. So if we not running quality stories on the front page and the Metro cover, that means they went through you, so therefore you didn't edit quality stories. So can we just go ahead and get to the point of what your problem is? I said the real problem is y'all had a meeting where my name came up with all the white editors. I said, oh, you didn't think I was aware of the meeting, huh? Yeah, I was aware of the meeting. And I had a white staffer who said to me, I would have never thought to even do all of that. I said, because you're not black. You don't have to.
That's right.
I said, you get to come to work every day as a white woman and be a white woman. I, as the only black male news reporter in the whole newsroom, I have to come to work thinking these white folks might try to fire me today. So I got to have my backup ready at all times when they come for me. That's the difference between me and you. And this is a perfect example, Reese.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I'm in corporate America, so I have my cover your ass file at all times, okay? Because we have to have the receipts. Nobody's just going to take our word for it. We have to have data, we have to have metrics, and we have to have results that speak for themselves. But I will say, one of the things I did want to talk about as it relates to this story is, you know, there's a lot of justifiable disillusionment with what happened in terms of the lack of charges being brought in the Breonna Taylor case. And I've seen a lot of people push back on the notion of, well, you know, this is why we have to vote and this is why voting matters. And I think about people like Valerie Castile and even Lucy McBath and Sabrina Filton and other mothers of the movement who have actually turned their pain into purpose and who have actually said, my child did not get justice, but I'm not going to write off solutions. I'm not going to pack up my bag and go home and say there's nothing that any of us can do. And so I hope that people look at like the story that you just ran. And as Ms. Castile said, anything that you do is a plus. And so we have things that we can do that are a plus that could save lives. You know, they banned no-knock warrants in Louisville. That's something that's in the Justice and Policing Act on the federal level. That's something that we can do. We can get Mitch McConnell's ass out as a Senate Majority Leader so that we can actually pass the 400 bills that are collecting dust. We can get Donald Trump's ass out of the White House and Bill Barr out of the DOJ and Chad Wolf out of the HHS, and I can go on and on and on, so that we can start to see some change that's already been put forth for us. Will it change everything immediately? No. Will it be the silver bullet? No. But as Ms. Castile said, anything that we can do is a plus. And sitting by, idly by, and complaining and railing against the system, but having no parts of actually changing it is just not going to cut it. Not in 2020, because too much is at stake. And inaction is the same as action, but that's complicitness with the white nationalist party that will see to our demise sooner rather than later.
Folks, we were talking about, of course, earlier, the election, the games that are being played. This just in. Remember, the other day we talked about South Carolina, where a federal judge said that a witness signature was not needed for South Carolina absentee ballots because of COVID. Well, as you can expect, go to my iPad, just in, U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals stays the lower court ruling that struck down the witness signature requirement for absentee ballots in South Carolina. Witness signatures are now required again. That in from the Fourth Circuit, and just for folks who don't quite know, Greg, the Fourth Circuit was one of those conservative circuit courts where Republicans like Jesse Helms and others purposely kept not only black folks from getting appointed to the Fourth Circuit, but they fought Democrats as well, because this is part of the deal. And this is where, I need you, Simple Simon. I need y'all to understand, all of you ignorant folk, stuck on stupid folk, who keep falling for this, I ain't voting, it ain't changed nothing. I need y'all to understand the game. The person who is president picks federal judges. the Senate confirms or rejects federal judges. So let me walk through the scenario again for you simple Simons. South Carolina requires a witness, meaning when your absentee ballot comes in, you can't just fill it out and mail it in. No, they require someone to be there to witness it. You might have to get a notary. That costs you money. We call it a poll tax.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. So, federal judge strikes it down, goes to the Fourth Circuit. They then reverse it. This is what happens, y'all. This is how, and I need y'all to understand why Donald Trump wants this hardcore Republican to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Because what they know is when all y'all sue, or when somebody sues on your behalf and it goes to court, it's likely today, if I pull up, again, I'm just, if y'all don't want to believe me, just believe the numbers because I got receipts. Vanita Gupta tweeted this earlier. She leads a leadership conference on civil and human rights. This is what she said. I'm going to blow it up so y'all can actually see it because maybe y'all can need it in big boldness to understand the game. This is what she tweeted. Instead of passing the HEROES Act, which the House passed 132 days ago, the Senate confirmed Trump's 218th lifetime judge today. Stacking the courts and rushing through a SCOTUS nominee is all McConnell cares about. But we fight on for our courts and for our democracy every day. So, simple Simons, if you are in South Carolina and you aren't registered, or if you are registered and you say, I ain't voting, that means that you make it easier for Lindsey Graham to be reelected. Who is Lindsey Graham? Lindsey Graham, since Republicans are in the majority, is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. What does that mean? That means he is the one who is shepherding through these federal judges and the Supreme Court position. Now, if you elect Jamie Harrison, and if Dems pick up seats in Arizona, Colorado, and Maine, Democrats are now in control of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So that means they are likely to appoint judges that believe in Brown versus Board of Education, that believe in civil rights, that believe in climate change, that believe in voting rights. That more than likely is going to give you a fair hearing when it comes to the death penalty, or when it comes to striking black jurors from cases. So when you simple Simons say, I ain't voting, what you're actually doing is putting a nail in your own coffin. Because when your friend or your cousin who is in prison,
come on,
and they withheld evidence in his trial, and then he then sues with the help of the Innocence Project or the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law or the NAACP Legal Defense Fund or the ACLU, if they go before a federal district judge who is appointed by McConnell and Trump, which means they might be far right, they likely not going to rule in your favor. And so then you're going to appeal their ruling like they did in South Carolina, and it's going to go to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Come on.
And if they are right wing, they are going to rule against you, which now means that you only have one other place to appeal, and that is the United States Supreme Court. And if they have a 6-3 conservative, hardcore, right-wing majority on the Supreme Court, they won't even hear your case, and if they do, they will reject it. And they are the final arbiter. So that means when you sit your ass at home, when you don't vote, You allow all of that to happen, and then you're likely the one on my YouTube channel, on my Twitter feed, or on my Facebook page going, nothing is changing because you sat on your ass. Greg Carr.
No, Roland, you're right, of course. And, something Reese said a minute ago, certainly, let me just co-sign what you said on all of it, but especially when you talked about the algorithms on Twitter, the folks who are trying to help Donald Trump in re-election, who are not here in the United States, are weaponizing the ignorance that is coming from some people who are real life folk. I love what you said. Says some people so woke they sleep. When they tweet something silly, it's getting amplified by a number of bots, folks who are trying to undermine the election. And Roland, what you laid out is very important. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals covers Maryland. So all you geniuses in Baltimore, Annapolis, talking about don't vote, Prince George's County. It covers North Carolina. So all the geniuses in Charlotte and Raleigh and people in the hood saying don't vote, who'll be the first ones to get caught up in that mess you're talking about, Roland. It covers South Carolina. It covers Virginia, so Norfolk and Richmond, and it covers West Virginia as well. There's black folk there too. But I'm going to go back to South Carolina for a minute because the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals is one of those courts of appeals, one of the four, I think, at this point, that the white nationalist party has flipped. Because Donald Trump, with his brain rotting in his skull as his waistline expands and as he basically turns to goo in front of our eyes, is a signing pen for Mitch McConnell, that feckless ghoul from Kentucky. And the list they have was a list that was composed before Donald Trump oozed his way into the White House in 2016 with the help of an election they stole because of voter suppression. This is Hansband, Basfasi and them. But the point that you raised, Roland, cannot be overemphasized. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers that many black people, understand what these circuits are. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals was flipped by the Trump administration. There are 15 judges on it. 8 of them have been appointed by Republicans, the last 3 by Donald Trump, including one Allison Jones Rushing, who is on the short list to be perhaps get this seat they're going to steal the Supreme Court. And she's one of those retrogrades. Listen, people think, oh, it's not about a woman's right to choose. Is it not about a woman being able to control her body? Do you understand these people want to send you to something that Margaret Atwood was writing when she wrote the damn Handmaid's Tale? You got these Christian, but anyway, it don't matter, huh? Finally. Roland, this and what you said is very important in this regard, brother. In all regards, but this one especially. Supreme Court doesn't touch any but a fraction of federal law. Judge-made law in the United States of America is made at the district court level and at the Court of Appeals. All but a handful of cases are decided at those 2 levels. They don't make it to the Supreme Court. Who's on the circuit court matters. If they get 4 more years, it don't vote, people don't work, don't worry about that, people. I want you to explain to your mom and them when they come busting in doors, except this time it's legal. I want you to explain to your cousin and them when they outlaw marijuana from coast to coast, except people with a license, and somebody get caught up and given from now on. And the discretion of the judge is hand-tied, and the courts back the state. I want you to explain to your children when national security is used as the pretext to shut down everything from the public schools to the churches. It don't even matter because these judges will rule in favor of the people that installed them there. They've been planning this project for 30 years. Actually more, but we won't even get into that.
No, we are going to get into it because I need all these simple Simon, stuck on stupid black people and others who watch us. I need y'all to listen. Eisenhower was pissed with Earl Warren because of Brown versus Board of Education.
Oh, yeah.
Said that was the biggest mistake he made as president in 2 terms, naming Earl Warren as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, 1954. First of all, y'all forget there were 2 Brown rulings, Brown 1 and Brown 2. Then you go to Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. Then you go to Albany, Georgia. Then you go to the Nashville movement. Then you go to SNCC. Then you go through all those different civil rights. A lot of y'all don't realize, folks like conservative William Buckley was supportive of civil rights.
Yep.
Until Barry Goldwater runs in 1964 and writes his book, The Conscience of a Conservative. And then all of a sudden, that became the conservative Bible. Y'all need to understand, all of these schools named after Confederate leaders, most of that happened after Brown v. Board of Education. But see, what y'all got to understand is that the conservatives were paying attention. See, I showed y'all the book, and see, this, I think part of the problem is a bunch of y'all simple Simons can't read, or y'all don't read. Because see, I showed you the book, and I showed you the reason, and I read this book more than 15 years ago, Reese, because I needed people, and I was blown away when I read the book, because it detailed exactly what happened. Y'all, the book is called, if I can pull it up right here, the book is called, I'm just going to blow it up, Unlikely Heroes, a vivid account of the implementation of the Brown decision in the South by Southern federal judges committed to the rule of law. These were all white men who believed in the rule of the law, and these white men opposed the white neighbors, the white church members where they lived, and they said the law is the law, and they were the ones who actually interpreted. Y'all did not hear Greg when he said the Fourth Circuit covers Maryland, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. Greg, who does the Fifth Circuit cover?
Oh, wow. That's Georgia and them. You're going south on that one.
The Fifth Circuit, y'all, covers Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas. These white judges interpreted Brown v. Board of Education.
Tell them look up Eugene Tuttle.
The white conservatives got mad because the federal judges were the ones who made it law, and that's how Jim Crow failed.
That's right.
So the conservative think tanks, funded by the Scapes and the Mellons and other rich conservatives, the Southern Baptist Convention, and all of that, they were pissed.
Yes.
And they said, how in the hell did this happen? And then 1972 rolls around and you got busing. Read Bob Brown's book. Nixon, one of the things that Nixon did was he quietly made busing happen. Bob Brown helped. But federal judges were the ones who ruled. And so these white conservatives, but how? Then 1972 became Title IX.
That's right.
Professional schools open for women.
That's right.
Now women can become engineers and doctors and dentists and lawyers. Then you had Roe v. Wade. And the conservatives said, in order for us to control America, we must get control of the federal bench.
That's right.
That's when the Federalist Society. And then the Federalist conservatives said, those liberal schools, and they said, no. They said, we're going to send our kids to those liberal schools.
That's right.
Because guess what? The Supreme Court justices, they mostly come from Harvard and Yale and Columbia and Princeton. So we're going to send our kids there. So we're not going to open a Federalist Society chapter. And what we're going to do is we're going to raise the next generation of far right-wing, hardcore judges who we have groomed, who we have paid for, who we have given the scholarships to. Why do you think Justice Anthony Kennedy cut a deal with Donald Trump saying the only way I will retire is if you replace me with one of my law clerks, Brett Kavanaugh? Brett Kavanaugh, y'all, was groomed for the Supreme Court since he was in law school. And while you simple Simons are sitting your asses right now, bitching right now at me on Facebook and Periscope and YouTube, saying all you doing is trying to carry the water for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats, they have been funding, teaching, promoting, and raising up the very people who want to keep your ass from voting, who want to keep you locked up. And that's why they control legislatures across the South, which then led to political gerrymandering, which is why they control the state Supreme Courts, which is why they control the Florida legislature and the Mississippi legislature and the Alabama legislature, because what they also figured out was if we can control the courts will reaffirm what we do on the state level.
That's right.
So when the Supreme Court ruled that we can't make a determination on political gerrymandering, so what they then said is, it's up to you. So what they said is only the state Supreme Court can rule on political gerrymandering.
Right.
Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruled against political gerrymandering. What did Republicans do? They tried to impeach the folks on the court. In North Carolina, only because Democracy North Carolina and repairs of the breach in the NAACP and others fought there. Democrats now have 5-2 majority in North Carolina Supreme Court. Who ruled that racial gerrymandering was illegal? The North Carolina State Supreme Court. So for you, all you simple Simons out there who did not pay attention during school, I need you to understand that the conservatives, Reese, said if we can control the U.S. Supreme Court and the state Supreme Court, we've got open runway to do whatever we desire. Go ahead.
And they won. They won with Donald Trump. They're going to get their 6-3 majority on the Senate. They're going to have generations of young, white, male, right-wing judges that were dispersed throughout the entire country. What this election about right now is stopping the bleeding, okay? It's stopping a complete takeover of our judicial branch, because up until this point, the few judges that are left are the judges that are left that are appointed by Democrats are the only thing that have stood in the way of full-blown fascism and authoritarianism from Donald Trump's white nationalist criminal regime. And so people have to understand that elections have consequences. You guys have laid it out at every single level. Judges are either appointed by people who are elected or they are elected directly. And so we have a responsibility to be engaged on that level. Republicans are judicial voters. Democrats are not. Democrats are personality voters. Democrats are litmus test voters. Democrats are I want you to, make me feel warm and fuzzy inside kind of voters. And Republicans keep their eye on the ball. They keep their eye on generational power. We're talking about decades of power. As Dr. Carr said, we can go back 3 decades or even more. And so we have to turn our lens towards the power that we need to seize so that we can try to roll back some of this shit. And it's also not just the judicial power that comes from Donald Trump. It's also the bureaucratic power that comes from the Trump administration. He's using much more executive power. He's going to have an executive order to limit women's rights to reproductive to contraceptives and things like that. We're not even just talking about abortion. We're talking about contraceptions. And
that's right.
Today it came out that DHS is putting forth plans to limit the visa stay from what it was normally. It was a typical 4-year stay. There wasn't a time limit, but it expired when your studies completed. Limiting it to 2 years, which laser focuses on Africa. Almost every single nation in Africa is included on there, as well as Asian countries and predominantly Muslim countries. So what we're seeing already, every day, more news comes out about the way that the bureaucracy of our government, which has normally taken a bit of a backseat and career officials have been more of the driving force, we're seeing the way that the Donald Trump white nationalist administration is seizing the power that has always been there to implement an agenda that is detrimental to our country. And if the last thing I'll say is look at the public health response. There have been reports about Jared Kushner's quote unquote task force that supplanted the duties that would normally be done by FEMA and other government agencies. So you have the dichotomy between Trump on one hand seizing power and abusing it to implement his white nationalist organization or agenda, but also breaking down the bureaucracy in other cases. We see a breakdown in the CDC where they can't keep their facts straight about what is causing COVID, aerosols, respiratory droplets. They post up and then they reject it. The FDA, Trump is saying now that a vaccine will have to come through his administration. So we see where the government is being broken down in some places, and we see where it's being centralized in other places to give Trump more authority. So we have to step in now and understand that this is not a personality contest. This is not a warm and fuzzy contest. This is about the future of our nation. It's life or death, and it's about generations. This is not a 4-year, oh, we'll just fix it, worst case scenario in 4 years. This is a generational election, period.
The thing, just a couple more points here, Erica, is just as simple as this here. This election is not about Biden-Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Erica, the people who don't understand what we're talking about here is that if they, and let me just be as clear as possible, Erica, if they are able to control the White House and control the United States Senate, they are going to be able to put the pieces in place to literally control America for the next half century. So for the black people, and I'm looking at some of y'all right now who are saying, oh my goodness, you're too dramatic. I've laid it out for you. They've already gotten 218 federal judges. If you do the math, let's just say they win 4 years, Erica, and double it, they are going to have 450 to 500. There are only about 900 federal judges in America. Last point before I go to you, Erica. Greg said they control the Fourth Circuit. Greg, what's considered the most liberal circuit court of appeals in America?
The one McConnell just put somebody else on, the ninth.
The ninth. West Coast?
California.
Y'all.
Yes.
They literally are 1 or 2 seats away from controlling even the Ninth Circuit. Erica, go ahead.
You know, Roland, if this were being played in a foreign country, people would be saying, what in the hell is happening in America? And it's only really this past week have I been hearing on mainstream coverage, people start talking about retaining some semblance of democracy. This program has been hollering at least for the past couple of years. And so this is what people need to see, even if at the time where you're laying out very eloquently, very pointedly, Reese is, and so is Dr. Carr as well, that this is really what it boils down to. This is about fucking life or death, period. That's exactly what this is about. All of these alternate realities that people have rolled themselves in social media. Think about this ban that's already happening on TikTok. You can cut that shit all the way out. Every distraction will be cut. And the only thing that people will be able to focus on is what we've been talking about here on Roland Martin Unfiltered for the past 2+ years, is understanding that this regime is on your neck. It wants nothing but absolute power. And the labor that produced this country, that we did, in fact, build this country for free, that they want it, and they want it fully. They do not want you to thrive. They don't want you to live free. The welfare that they are accustomed to, they want to continue to do that. And they are continuing to do that locking up the courts. They're freely telegraphing and telling you that they're going to steal this election. What people are having conversations about, Jaheim and all of the rest of the flunkies that are entering this conversation misinformed, dumb, and really with no understanding of what the impact that this is about life or death. And so if people want to see life like no other, then don't participate in the vote. But be prepared to fend, as Dr. Carr talked about, be prepared to fend for not only yourself or your family, because what we saw in the case of Breonna Taylor, that could become something that is just very, that happens on a day or at least every other daily basis. I've been to foreign countries, and these are things that people are crying and pleading and saying, can you go back and talk to people to help us in their countries? We will be that nation. So
That's
participating in the vote is something that everybody needs to do, because it is a right that other people flourish in, and they also flourish in it dually, ensuring that we are oppressed from doing it. But unless people are willing to accept what lies ahead, which is a total obsequience to Donald Trump and everybody else, in the same position that many of our brothers and sisters are that have been impacted by COVID in the economic realm, be prepared for that, because that is what's coming, and it's coming fast.
That's right.
Final comment, Dr. Greg Carr.
No, I agree. There's nothing more important. It's funny, some of my friends who are friends, I understand, I think they just have a fundamental misreading. Or they are reading, but they're reading for quotes. They read like lawyers. In other words, they're trying to win an argument instead of protect people. And I think they think they're trying to protect people. But ultimately, Roland, what you've laid out is critical to understand. Nations come and go. And this is definitely a generational election, but it's one that has been built on a different understanding of where we are. As I said before, these federal judges, Supreme Court justices in particular, tend to retire if they're part of the white nationalist party. As you said, Anthony Kennedy is approached and has this negotiation that takes place. Yeah, Scalia dropped dead, but Sandra Day O'Connor is still alive. She stepped out. One critique, and it's a legitimate critique of both Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Stephen Breyer, is that they did not retire. In fact, Thurgood Marshall waited too long. But it's typically because the Democratic Party seems to think that they're involved in a country that has some rules that are different than the real rules. The real rule is power. And so you do what you need to do when you need to do it. But the stolen election of 2000, the stolen election of 2004, and then the Obama interregnum, by then the Democrats seem to have some genius philosophy that they're chasing these three toothless white voters in Ohio that they will never get back, instead of the swelling numbers of non-whites who have sense and young people, have led to this moment. The change election was probably 2016, the stolen election of 2016. What we are doing now, as Reese has just said, is trying to stop the bleeding. And finally, what Linda Sarsour said on this show to you. We're trying to pick our best opponent, because as Erica just said, these cats get back in, we're going to find out, Nuck, if you buck. And all you cats saying with your chest that it don't matter, I hope you're ready to get out in the street and protect your mama and your daddy and your cousins and them, because these people here, they coming for your natural life.
And just so you understand, folks, Tuesday was National Voter Registration Day, and guess what? On that day in Louisiana, the portal to register, which was run by the Secretary of State, just all of a sudden was down for maintenance on National Voter Registration Day. He got called out by lots of folks for that. But again, you now understand the game that is being played. All right, folks, sad news. One of the greatest NFL players ever to play the game, Gale Sayers, has passed away. He, of course, played for the Chicago Bears, was a great at Kansas. I mean, an unbelievable football player, one of the fastest ever. But to understand how significant Gale Sayers was, the man only played 5 years in the NFL before serious knee injuries ended his career. How major is that? He was still, the man who was called the Kansas Comet, was still inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the age of 34, the youngest ever. Played 5 years, 5-time All-Pro, who averaged 5 yards per carry for his career. Just unbelievable. Commissioner Roger Goodell remembered him as one of the finest men in NFL history and one of the game's most exciting players. He passed away from cancer, but he had also, the family had announced a couple of years ago that he had suffered from dementia. Again, folks talk about football. They talk about Barry Sanders and a bunch of these people here. But my God, Greg Hart, anybody who saw video or film, not video, film of Gale Sayers knew that brother was a different kind of ball player.
I'll tell you something real quick, Roland. It's very interesting. And it's so, the ancestors, they really, man, they don't make no mistakes. Today, you chose to honor, my alma mater and one that you've spoken to our graduates, Tennessee State University, that sweatshirt on, brother. I'm so happy to see that. My one interaction with the great Gale Sayers is when, for a brief moment, back in 1985-86, he was the athletic director at Tennessee State. And he was the athletic director that allowed the state of Tennessee, along with an interim president who's an ancestor now, Roy Peterson, to force Tennessee State University into the Ohio Valley Conference. And part of it was because in the attack against HBCUs, they want these black colleges to lose their racial identity. Hey, good luck, boys. Y'all see Primetime is taking over at Jackson State.
Indeed.
You got to train all of these brothers that are going to these white schools in about 5 minutes. But at any rate, I remember cussing Gale Sayers out at the press conference and saying, "You Tom." And I don't regret that. However, I will say this in Gale Sayers' defense. Gale Sayers was a man of conviction. He didn't do that because he thought he was selling black people out. As a young person, young people say all kind of stuff. But Gale Sayers was a person of conviction. And I think that is the real testament of his life. He lived a life of personal integrity in an attempt to show to this country that how you were born, where you were born, and what your race or culture is should not matter before the common humanity we share. And I can say that about Gale Sayers. Even though I disagree with him politically on that point when I was a kid, I must say that Gale Sayers, it's a testament to how he lived his life that he's being celebrated today, brother.
Absolutely. Folks, as you say, I am wearing a Tennessee State. I've been rocking HBCU gear all week. North Carolina A&T was on Monday. Virginia State was on Tuesday. Florida Memorial was on yesterday, and then Tennessee State today. And so, of course, I was going to wear it on Thursday since Greg went there. Of course, had to do that. So, folks, so y'all want to support?
Hey, Roland.
Yeah.
You got Daniel Cameron is a Sigma. What we gonna do about that, bro?
No, he ain't no alpha. We can tell.
No, he ain't.
That's no that ruling. There's no so let's see if Sigmas claim him. All right, y'all.
Right.
If y'all want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, please do so. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. You can join us via Cash App, $RM Unfiltered, PayPal.me/R Martin Unfiltered, Venmo.com/RM Unfiltered. Also, folks, you can send your money order to New Vision Media, NU Vision Media Inc., 1625 K Street Northwest, Suite 400, Washington, D.C., 2006, folks. Our goal is to get 20,000 of you supporting us by the end of the year. Your dollars make this show possible. For us to be able to give the kind of information that we do every single day, you ain't gonna hear this kind of stuff being broken down the way we do it on MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, NBC, CBS. Because here, I'm not asking somebody permission, can we talk about black stuff? We don't ask permission. We just do it. And so we need your help in doing so. So please, if y'all on YouTube, nearly 5,000 of y'all can join right there on YouTube, or you can go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com and join us there as well. Reese, Erica, Greg, thank you so very much for being on today's panel. We shall see y'all tomorrow. Thanks a bunch.